January, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. You know how this month actually got its name? It's from the Roman god Janus. He has two faces, one looking back and the other one looking forward. So this morning, Nancy and I are going to look back and look forward. In Latin, Janus's name was pronounced Janua, which means doorway. We're at the doorway of a new year. It's a good time to reflect on what we've done in the past and what we want to have happen in the year to come. Because Janus has two faces, he's also considered to be able to look both inward and outward. So let's begin by looking inward at our individual paths. Now, what do you see when you look back over your own personal life in this past year? Take a look. You might need to take another deep breath. Yes, okay, look. Did anybody here have an absolutely perfect year? I see no hands up. Oh, one hand, I love it. Somebody did. For most of us, there have been some glitches, right? First, take a look at the things that went wrong. Things that went wrong. Ooh, sad faces now. Oh, yeah. Now, did any of those things go wrong because you made a mistake? Yeah. So, if so, is there something you can learn from those mistakes? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Don't do that again. Yeah, that's a good thing to learn from your mistake. Yeah. And now here's the tough part. Can you forgive yourself? Can you forgive yourself? Yeah. Can you do it? Well, I don't know, she says. Yeah, this is the hard part, right? But it's important. It's a new year. See if we can let those things go. And now look at the things that went right for you last year. What went right for you last year? Did any of those things go right because you made good choices? Yeah? Oh, okay, pat yourself on the back. Yeah, we made some good choices. Okay, yeah, way to go. And if anybody make New Year's resolutions? Did you make New Year's resolutions? Yeah, make a resolution to do that again. Yeah. Do those good choices.
Somebody say March.
So now let's look backward over the life of our congregation, not just this past year, but earlier than that. How many people have been involved with this congregation for less than a year? Let me see the hands. Less than a year. See a bunch of hands. Yeah, welcome. We're glad you're with us. Yeah, hand for them. Yeah. Okay, now how about people who have been with us for a year or two? Year or two, yeah, a bunch of those hands too. How about people who have been 3 or 4 years? 3 or 4. Yeah, okay, I see some hands there. 5 or 6 years. Oh, yeah. 7 or 8 years. 7 or 8. How about 9 or 10 years? We're back to 2005 now. Woohoo! I have my hand up too because 2005, that was the year I had moved to New Mexico and I joined up too. Though I had been here a few times before. When I was a traveling musician, I would pop in and do services every now and again. So I had seen this congregation and I knew how neat it was and how friendly everybody was. Now, I was looking back at the membership book, and the first signatures were in 1996, Charter Sunday, when we actually became part of the Unitarian Universalist Association, was November 10th, 1996. Who started the very first year? Yeah, look at those hands. All right. Woohoo! Yeah, all right. And anybody else I missed in those years in between? No, okay. Yeah, Sally. How many years?
I think 98 or 99.
98 or 99. All right. 97. All right. And Jeff, 98. Cool. So we've got some history in this congregation. A lot has happened since 1996. This building was purchased and dedicated in 1999, And construction of that west wing, that whole other wing over there, started in 2002, and that was the same year that we had our first settled minister. But we've always been about more than bricks and mortar. Now take our longest running and most active group, which is Loose Ends. Hi, good. That group has been going for almost as long as we've been a congregation, right? Well, yeah. They began making hats for homeless people, and then they started helping Storehouse West by mending children's clothes that had been donated, sewing on buttons and things like that. And over the years, they've made dolls, teddy bears, quilts, banners, including these two banners that we've got up front here. Yeah. They collected toiletries, bedding, other items for the battered women's shelter, Haven House, and this year alone, they collected 40 pairs of children's pajamas for needy children. Is that cool or what? Yeah, give them another hand. They focused on outreach, but they've done many things for the congregation as well, and such as buying the hymnals that we're using this morning right here in the pews. They operate democratically, and they make decisions as a group, and there's always been a spirit of support for each other as they work on projects. So we've accomplished a whole lot of things as a congregation. For instance, we established a West Side Forum. Who was involved in West Side Forum? We got people who do that? Yeah, right. To present programs for the community that would focus on social justice. We became a green sanctuary to build awareness of environmental issues. We became a welcoming congregation. Actually, we all went through classes here to raise the consciousness of lesbian, gay, and transgender issues. And every year, the congregation has a presence at the Gay Pride Parade. How many people have been part of our thing at the Gay Pride Parade? Yes, all right. We created not only one, but two labyrinths on our property and have held labyrinth walks, yes, right? We had men's and women's groups and covenant groups and circle suppers and social events. We ran teen nights and children's Saturdays. We've had two drum circles in our history, and the latest one is called the UU Multi-Faith Drum Circle, and it draws people from the community as well as from our congregation. We created our very own chapter of the Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans called Moon Spirit Cups, yes, give them there, yes, and established a presence at the Pagan Pride Festival in Albuquerque. We decorated the sanctuary. Would you believe that the first time I was here, this was all dark wood up here, and it even included a baptismal font, right? You remember that? Yes. Although that occasion was really something because you all had rhythm and blues singer Linda Cotton here, and we were rocking the place out. Yes, right. Let's see, we worked on the grounds, the gardening, and clearing brush, and planting trees, putting in an irrigation system. We adopted a section of Unser, and we went out with trash bags to clean it up. If anybody remember all that? Yes, Sally, I thought you would, yeah. We had yard sales out in the hot sun, I'm sure you remember that, and bake sales and craft sales at Christmas time. Now, like everybody, we made mistakes in the past, and sometimes we learned from those mistakes, and sometimes we didn't, right? One mistake was we seemed to keep making was leaving it up to a few people to do the majority of the work on a project, and then people would get burned out. You've experienced that, right? And another mistake was in the way we communicated with each other, or we kind of failed to communicate, and people would get mad and then they go away, right? So we're hoping not to make that mistake again, right? Let me hear a big right. Right, all right, yes. Sometimes we would just let resentment simmer about even really stupid little things. So it's a new year, and if you feel that anybody has wronged you, can you let it go? This is the moment to do it. Can you let it go? And if you feel guilty that you made a mistake, can you let that go too? Yeah, try to do that. We are not doomed to cycle around and endlessly repeat mistakes we've made before. Imagine us moving instead as a spiral where we dance together, learning from the past and dancing into the future. Nancy.
So Carol has started us on the spiral journey of the new year by helping us to look backwards, to remember the highlights and some of the lowlights, perhaps, of our history as the Unitarian Universalist West Side congregation of Rio Rancho. It's a really very impressive title, you know.
It did, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Let's get this up a little.
Is that-
I'm so much shorter than you are. Yeah. Yes. How's that? Will that work? Okay.
How are we doing?
Yeah.
Okay,
a little
good.
better.
All right. I have to tell you, I have never been accused of being too soft-spoken, so I tend not to worry about it, so you'll have to let me know. At any rate, what I want to do is share with you a little bit of my personal spiritual journey. Because while it's very true that this entire congregation is on its own communal spiral journey, each one of us here also is on our own individual personal journey, which also is a spiral of some sort. And they intersect here, there, sometimes more or less than others, but I'd like us to think about how that happens. And so by way of illustration, I want to share with you a little bit about my own journey. Now, my spiral, like all spirals, has a beginning point. If you think about the spiral, that little tiny tip of focus down at the bottom is where it all begins, and then it just swirls out from there. So for me, that place was pretty traditional, if somewhat liberal, for the 1950s and 60s. I had your basic Christian upbringing. I was baptized soon after my birth, attended Sunday school, and I still have the attendance pins that I received for not missing a single session, which seriously, we should have given them to my parents because they were the ones that got us there. However, I was confirmed by the bishop, and I still remember this very tall man with silver hair and a purple shirt who confirmed me when I was 12. And it really looked like I was headed down a very traditional WASP path. But as I look back, I realized that there were many points that drew that straight line into a circle that with advancing age and hopefully a little maturity became a spiral of growth that sometimes looked like I had gone in a totally opposite direction and sometimes looked like I was headed back to the same old thing, even if it now looked a little bit different than what I remembered from the first time around. That's sort of the nature of a spiral. I'm thinking of the Lutheran girl who moved into my class in 4th grade and rode my bus with me. I had never heard of Lutheran before. There seemed to be an awful lot of different kinds of Christians who all claimed that they were living like Jesus, but then again, they all had different names and did it differently. So what was that about? Clearly that straight line had some curves. And then of course, never mind the Lutherans, there were the Catholics. Seriously people, I was the token Protestant child in an extraordinarily Catholic suburb of Boston. The bus on Wednesday, which was CCD Day, some of you will remember CCD Day. Catholic Christian Doctrine is what those letters stand for. And on the bus, every Tuesday, or Wednesday, excuse me, they would be sitting there, all the other kids, going through their catechism books, because there were questions and answers in that book. And they had CCD class that afternoon, and if they didn't have those answers memorized, right down to the last detail, Sister, I have no idea who she was, but Sister was going to be mad. And all I can tell you is that the prospect of Sister being mad motivated millions of children to memorize stuff. My job was to ask them their questions. And I had this odd experience because I was growing up in what was then called a low Episcopal church, which sort of means not a whole lot of ritual, but we did still use the prayer book, etc. So in my Episcopal church, I was taught all kinds of stuff, but I was taught that the most important thing for me to do was to learn the truth of the stories of Jesus, but not to memorize things and parrot them back. I had to be able to put it into my own words. Otherwise, they were a little suspicious that I hadn't really learned anything. I was just parroting their words back at them, which was in such contrast to my Roman Catholic friends who had to memorize it right down to the commas. And so I, at one point in time, was quite well versed in the Roman Catholic Catechism. And it was an interesting experience of two very different learning styles that sort of expanded this loop that I was beginning to recognize. And then it just so happened that the first boy I dated was a Jew, and I married an ex-Roman Catholic. I just couldn't seem to keep those boundaries and the lines of allegiance, straight like they were supposed to. They kept on curving around. And then when I had children, I took them to what was called a federated church, where there were no differences between Methodists or Baptists or Congregationalists or pretty much anyone else. Now, you may think the federated church really sounds like it should be a bank. I mean, really? The first time I drove by and saw the name outside the church, it was like, what is a federated church? It's actually pretty much a New England phenomenon, and it was born out of necessity. It just goes to show you that sometimes when people are in stressful circumstances, we can get together and do the right thing. Because what happened was, in this little town, there were three churches: a Congregational church, which you would now recognize as UCC, a Baptist church, and a Methodist church. But the First World War was on, and coal was rationed. And the town was so small that the powers that be determined, they'd issue coal for the churches on Sunday morning for one church, because that was all they could justify. So the various Protestant churches got together and decided, okay, they would just have to bite the bullet and learn to worship and live together. What made it easier was that the Baptist minister decided to go become a chaplain for the armed forces. The Methodist church burnt to the ground, and that pretty much left the Congregationalists as the only act in town. However, they decided that the system was working so well at the conclusion of the war that they incorporated as this multi-denominational federated church and maintained official denominational alliances with each denomination. And there was also a fourth group of folks at the church. I forget what they called them, something about the allied group, but they were allied with nothing except that church. But we had Jehovah's Witnesses and Greek Orthodox people and Roman Catholic people, all of whom had equal standing, could vote, all of that sort of thing on all of the issues before the church. So my children and I found ourselves, sort of by accident, but I'm sure there's a grand design somewhere, at this place that, again, pushed the boundaries and helped swing that spiral out to be a much more inclusive kind of spiritual experience, although at that point in time, still just Christian. So then I went to seminary. And I discovered the richness of the backstory of other religions and cultures that surrounded the people of both the Old and New Testaments. I had loved discovering that Jesus was not the first wisdom teacher. He was not the first to have had a reportedly divine heritage. He was not even the first to die for people he loved and be resurrected on the third day. Wait till Easter, people, I'm telling you. I've got stories for you. The idea that all of these ideas had been around before and that Jesus was part of a larger pattern really excited me. I was spiraling way out there, and I loved it. Who knew that the patterns of spiritual life were so complex? Now, this threw some of my fellow students into a tizzy and all kinds of crises of faith because they were accustomed to looking for one single truth. But for me, discovering that all of these patterns were at work and certainly manifested themselves in the stories of Jesus was really affirming, and he, oddly enough, became a bridge to all kinds of other religious traditions and experiences. Now, my seminary years were also my biggest feminist study years, and I read all sorts of stuff. Starhawk, Adler, de Beauvoir, you name it, I probably read it. Even Marlowe Thomas. Remember Free to Be, You and Me? Yes, okay. I read them all. And I went to women's spiritual retreats and workshops and rituals, many of which today you might call pagan or wicked. And I discovered that I had a problem when I was there. Every time I closed my eyes and tried to follow the directions of the leader in any kind of guided imagery or creative meditation, Jesus showed up there. I did not invite him, but he was there. He didn't have anything to say, and he didn't do anything except distract me, but he was there. I could not get rid of him. And it wasn't because I didn't try. I tried. I tried asking him. I tried telling him. I tried ignoring him. I could not get him to go. He was still there. So finally, I just gave up and let him be there. Jesus came with me on more goddess quests than I can count. And once I had made my peace with his presence, I discovered something that I really hadn't expected. I could talk to him about my experiences afterward because he'd been there with me right through it. It was like I had an unexpected friend to bounce things off of, someone who didn't criticize or object to anything, but who helped me sort myself out. To this day, I am glad he came along, because while that part of the spiral was way out there as far as most of my colleagues, both Christian and Wiccan, thought, I knew I was still on the right path. Jesus is where my spirituality originates, and he goes where I go, apparently without any condemnation of any sort for any other religious tradition. Good news. This experience was particularly helpful in the last curve that I want to share with you. Sharing the faith, as you know, is important for many, if not most, Christians, particularly the senior, the older generations, who were taught that this is part of your Christian duty, and people will go to hell if you don't share the truth of Jesus with them. Folks who were taught that take that responsibility very seriously. Well, there was a lovely little lady named Ginny who was in her early 70s in my last congregation, who routinely reached out to her neighbors. When her new neighbors turned out to be a lovely young Hindu family, she was delighted. She genuinely liked them as people and was fascinated by stories of their life in India. When Padma, the woman, began to ask her about Jesus, Ginny was overjoyed. She was totally psyched. What a chance to save the souls of a whole family. She invited Padma to church, and Padma came. In fact, Padma really liked church. She also liked Jesus a lot. She wanted to know more about him and asked if we could help her get a Bible in her native language. We ended up finding an interlinear one that was printed with English, and I don't recall exactly what language she spoke, but her native tongue underneath it, so Ginny and Padma could study together and have all kinds of conversation. Things were going great until Padma moved and invited Ginny to visit her in her new house. And as Ginny came in the front door, she looked up, and over the entryway into the living room was Padma's altar, with a variety of Hindu gods and goddesses, with candles and little flowers and bits of food and incense as offering. And poor Ginny looked at it and said, Padma, what are you doing? I thought you loved Jesus. Oh, she says, I do. I put a cross right up there for him next to Vishnu. Ginny almost fell over. She had no idea what to do with this. She could not figure out where she'd gone wrong. How could anyone know and love Jesus and not give up everything else? And I realized that I was really way out on that curve now, as I reassured Ginny that if Padma loved Jesus, then Padma loved Jesus. There was no need to tell her to give up her other loves. And so I realized that my first spiritual language, my native tongue, so to speak, is Christian. But I have learned to love a whole lot more. I'm not fluent in everything else, not by a long shot. I'm sort of like a first-generation immigrant who's still struggling with language and culture. So I'm going to need some help making some bridges there. The path of my spiritual journey has brought me from my origins in Christianity here to Westside. Who knew? I mean, really? When you think about a spiral and where it's going to take you, it's important to realize that at some point you will be exactly opposite where you started out. Think about that for a minute, and then you're going to circle around again. At any rate, my journey is not yours, but there are points of connection that bode well for us. I am eager to build on the past and dance into the future with you.
So it's time to pass the light that illuminates the past and the present, showing us the spiral way. Now, Nancy, will you tell us something about this intriguing lamp?
All right, kids, what is this? Yeah, well, whose lamp? Aladdin. Yeah, I knew that's what they were going to think. Actually, this is more than that, but you were absolutely right, and I didn't want to leave that out. Because Aladdin stands for magic, yes? Aladdin could get magic from this lamp. This lamp is traditionally recognized also as the lamp of wisdom, and wisdom is its own kind of magic, if you think about it. I have this lamp because I, in my first incarnation, was a nurse. And as a student nurse, you receive a lamp like this because Florence Nightingale, y'all remember, was known as the lady with the lamp. The lamp has become a symbol of service and knowledge for nurses because Florence carried this at night so that she could take care of wounded soldiers. So for me, this particular lamp represents wisdom and service and all sorts of things rolled into one.
Yeah. So, from the light of the flaming chalice, I'm going to light this lamp, passing the light of the congregation to Nancy as she assumes the care of this congregation along the journey. I pass the light to you, Nancy. Do you promise to cherish, serve, and nurture this light and the people it represents in every aspect of the spiraling journey of our life together?
I do. I accept this light as caretaker and servant, as teacher and leader. I recognize this light as the same light that has guided me thus far. I will continue to protect and keep it.
Blessed be. Welcome, you new minister. Woo! Yeah. And expect some great magic. Yeah. Stand now as you're able. And we're going to sing together hymn number 311, Let It Be a Dance. And you guys can dance if you want to. Yeah, right. All right. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Oh, wait a minute. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, the time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong and nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, share the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance. Yes! Have a seat. I've really really enjoyed the time I've spent with you as minister this year. We lighted the fires of Pentecost. Remember that day that we all wore red? Yes. We talked about how to not let worry overwhelm your life. We explored what happens when you die. We rang our bells for freedom on the 4th of July. We received stars of wonder at Epiphany. We exchanged hearts for Valentine's Day. We lighted Hindu lamps at Diwali, and we danced with candles in the middle of winter. We had parades and processions, times of meditation and reflection, and times of merriment. And Nancy led us through workshops on how to communicate compassionately with each other. And she helped us create a vision for the future. We launched our new community outreach program, May All Be Well, in October. And we held gentle fitness classes, a workshop on baking gluten-free goodies, another workshop on healthy foods for the holidays. We held a gratitude labyrinth walk. And both the Albuquerque Journal and the Rio Rancho Observer wrote stories about our congregation, and we attracted people from the community to come to our events. Our pagan group, Moon Spirit Cups, has been very active. They've worked at making our presence known in the pagan community. The Yule ritual this year attracted 28 people, including 8 children, many of them new to UU Westside, and it was a lot of fun. And the drum circle, too, has drawn people to the congregation. We're launching our religious education program for children again. The animal ministry adds spark to our services, and Loose Ends continues to do its wonderful work. We now have a social media committee, and another new committee is planning future arts events, and we have a brand new sign. Yes. Yeah. Woohoo! There's a sense of hope and vibrancy. And a mark of that new hope is that 9 new members joined the congregation in 2014. That's more members than we've had join in any of the years since 2010. And they're active members, singing in the choir, doing services, leading May All Be Well events, creating a new eBay sales program, and getting to fly, taking flight, and that great spiral.
There is mystery and magic and science and hard cold fact at work here in our midst. Life is not an either-or proposition when it comes to these things. It's very much a both-and sort of thing. The growth of this congregation displays all of these things, and it will need us to honor all of them as we continue to grow. We're now looking forward in our spiral, folks. The path of my personal journey has spiraled round so that what I see when I look out from here is a world that needs a little UU experience. I see a world that doesn't know what to do with the rich variety of religious tradition and spiritual practice that inform and shape the lives of people around the world. The world is overwhelmed. Many people are devoted to peace in theory, but in practice, it's kind of hard. How do we live with people who don't understand the world the same way that we do, whose lives are shaped by different priorities and practices? Well, this congregation has pagans and atheists and Jewish and formerly Christian humanists with a bit of Buddhist and just plain questioning and curious all mixed together. And as you heard Carol describe, it works. If you look backwards over where this congregation has been, it's really kind of amazing. And if you look at the present moment, where we are right now, it's equally amazing and full of promise and hope for the future. We haven't always lived together easily, perhaps not always successfully, but the determination and the spirit to quest together here is amazing. I envision a bright future in which we all learn more about each other and what it means to be human here. I see an active future in which Westside engages with the community around it, both learning from it and doing some teaching in the world. As my new title suggests, and for those of you who don't know, the formal title for me is Consulting Minister. I am your consulting minister. It even says so on my name tag under here. Now, I love that title because to have a role as a consultant is to be one who can advise and encourage and all of those sorts of things, but it doesn't imply top-down power over command to others. That's just not part of this title. So I will consult and advise and encourage and comfort. I will also challenge and teach and guide where appropriate. I will focus a lot on process, because I'm warning you now, that's my thing. Former psych nurse here, it's what I do. And I will focus a lot on how we do things here, in addition to the actual content of what the congregation chooses to do. Because in the end, as we spiral around, having looked backward and now looking forward into our future together, it's about the congregation, about each of you and how your personal journey enhances and is enhanced by the life of this community. So we will keep on keeping on and let it be a dance. Blessed be.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
We will now have the extinguishing of our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Blessed be. And now I invite you to join hands around the sanctuary and join in our closing song, Go Now in Peace.